Hey, y'all. Welcome to Questions You Didn't Ask. Did you know that this very spot could be showcasing your business or event? Whether it's an audio ad on our podcast or a visual ad on our new YouTube station, or even both, we've got the space for you. Niasha Fray Consulting is reaching a growing audience of over 1,000 leaders who are passionate about health equity, social justice, and civil rights activism. These are professionals just like you, working across higher education, research, healthcare, nonprofit, government, and even public health sectors. If you're ready to get your message in front of a dedicated and engaged audience, send me an email at niashafrayconsultingllc@gmail.com. Let's talk about how we can help you connect with the people who need to hear about your services and products that advance health equity and wellness. Don't miss out. Get in the mix and let's make an impact together. Welcome back to Questions You Didn't Ask. I'm Niasha Fray, joined again by wellness entrepreneur Charles Chambers as we continue our series, Trippin, Black Men, Land, and Liberation. Let's pick up where we left off. You were talking about how, Black men, and you in particular, kind of get caught up in the suffering as normal, and how being productive is what's more important than your health and your wellness.
For sure.
One of the things that I was hearing too, that I've been hearing in our conversation, are two things: the challenges of apathy, as well as the resistance to vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I get very concerned about apathy in our community, in our society. But then when we think about health, wellness, sobriety, and our beloved Black men and brothers, sons, nephews, uncles, fathers, I'm concerned about that as well. When you think about the idea of people kind of giving up and being resigned to things being bad, especially among Black men, how does that, impact health and wellness, the journey toward health and wellness?
Well, I think a lot of our Black men are suffering unnecessarily, in our own little silos, doing our thing. Like, I have a friend of mine, and I feel for him. His health is deteriorating. And also, whenever I try and help him, he doesn't want it. And that, I think that's so typical of us Black men. He rejects it. He feels it. He rejects it flat out without even consideration of anything. No, don't need it. And I think so many of us are out here like that. And so, and how does that come to be? Like, how do we arrive at this thing, especially when we Black men have so many forces like fighting against us, and then for us to have this disposition of, I'm gonna do this on my own. How did we get here? I don't know, but I've jumped off that train. And now it's the thing of sharing feelings, understanding myself. So what I try and do for people is to show up and to say how I do it. That's the best I can do.
Yeah. Being an example, continuing to make yourself available, but not sacrificing yourself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's key. I also heard, in your discussion about putting work first, right? And then health of self and health of family and friends later. It also kind of spoke to that functional alcoholism, right?
Exactly.
And it also spoke to, these capitalistic, ideals around, well, at least you're working, at least you're making some money, at least you contributing to society, at least you're being a man. How does that resonate with you?
Yes, also familiar. Yes. Yeah, we've gotta do better as men. There has to be a change.
Yeah, I hear that, you know, a lot of people push back on this term of toxic masculinity because they feel that it's an attack on men. And really, what it is, it's an attack on the ideal of what a man is supposed to be that is unhealthy for both the man himself and the people who love him and the community that he lives and resides in. The idea that a man is only valuable based on the work that he produces and that his self-worth is tied up in his work. I think you've given a good example of how that is toxic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you were speaking of how this capitalism plays into the effect of our community, that even in terms of being a man, capitalism defines us, forces us to define our ways if we believe in that world, if that's where our mindset is. I was I was fortunate enough to go through rites of passage when I was
Mm.
in college, and that literally changed my life completely. Because what it was for me, it was an introduction into traditions that weren't under this capitalistic type of brainwashing or whatever. It was
Mhm.
the teachings and learnings that we went through were more about community and tribal type of contributions and developing. It was at a point when I was coming of age as a man, so the timing was perfect, and and then the principles that were instilled through that experience was all about these positive things that we're talking about today. There was a journey inward through this rites of passage. They took us back and then they brought us forward.
Mm.
And we walked out of that situation as men. And I believe that there's something like that we need to have for our own youth coming of age. That I think it needs to be this thing that has that it needs to be a difficult thing in front of a group of young men coming of age and these guys going through it. There's something about doing that as a group that pulls people together, that builds community. Then also, while we were out there, your undivided attention is on this whole process. We did it out in the forest, the rites of
Mhm.
passage. You,
Mhm.
I don't think you can do it inside a city. It needs to
Mhm.
have that component of separation, being away from all the things. And then also the distractions that come along with the city aren't there. But some sort of rites of passage for our youth where we can pass down information from older generations to younger generations to save them time. I believe that these young people, they're making the same mistakes that I did as a kid, where by having these moments where I could communicate with the younger generation and share with them things that will shorten that path of going through figuring stuff out. I'm also involved with a group of people in Cleveland that's working towards making that happen there with the men, not just in the community, but even with my own family. I've been working with the rites of passage. I'm working on our men, Reynolds, and the Reynolds family, that we do this as a tradition, that every kid that's coming of age, that we have a thing for them to pass
Mhm.
down information.
If you're enjoying the show as much as we love creating it, consider showing your support by buying us a cup of coffee. Visit buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. That's buymeacoffee.com/Naisha Fray O. All one word. Each cup is just $5, and every single one helps us continue to produce, develop, and sustain the high quality content you've come to expect from Questions You Didn't Ask. Thank you for your continued support, and let's keep the conversation going. Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said about a rites of passage for young folks, but especially for young men and for older men. You know, there is this experience. There's also some of the perception that young folks don't listen to old folks anymore, or that young folks are aggressive toward their elders or resist their elders. And so there's something going on in our community that we have to take hold of. And I think it relates back to what you were saying before about, you know, teaching our children and recognizing that our federal government, especially, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, our state governments, our local governments, counties are not doing the work that needs to be done to help prepare our children for the world and for life and living. Right. And so there's preparing them for the world, and then there's preparing them for life and living. Those are actually two different things. And being able to recognize those things and recognize that, yes, I'm a person who has come to understand that wisdom is not learned, it is earned. Mm-hmm. Earned through experience. When your elders can give you and curate an experience that will help you, like you said, kind of fast track some of that wisdom, then hopefully your earning of that wisdom isn't so painful by the world, right? You know, there is an idea that, you know, when your parents discipline you, it might feel harsh. It may even feel painful, but your parents are going to discipline you in a way prayerfully that is a lot less painful and detrimental than what the world will do to you, right? Mm-hmm. And so the idea that your parents or your family or your village or your rites of passage can facilitate that growth experience, that can be a lot less painful, not necessarily to say that it won't be challenging. It should be challenging.
Sure.
But it'll be a lot less painful than what will happen when you have to learn through the world, right? Through what's out there waiting for you and has no love or compassion for you. And I think, you know, bringing in that natural environment of to be in the world, but not of the world, right? To understand your natural connection and those higher powers that you can tap into through wisdom and through skills that might help you to facilitate growing your own food, contributing to your community, investing in your own cultural and community and village economy, I think can be a lot more healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
One more thing about the rites of passage. It's also being out there in the forest. These kids, it gets their attention, especially at night, you know, because for a lot of these kids, this is their first time away from home without their mom. And so that big and bad tough cat that's in the city on the streets is different when we're out in the middle of the forest, right? Mommy, right? And out there, you have their undivided attention. You know, there's no signal, so the cell phones are useless, and there's a focus where you can't get otherwise. And then also, what goes on there is really, it's an exploration in values. It's where, like, in the city, the kids are picking up these different values from a gazillion different places, and all of them aren't always good. But they're being out in the forest through this rites of passage. When we have their undivided attention, we can walk through these beliefs that they think they have and offer them real values. For example, like in terms of my family, like this is what Reynolds men do, and this is what Reynolds men don't do. We want to live a good life, and so with having a setting like that, I think would make a huge difference. Those rites of passage type of thing. We all go through rites of passages. It's just, for example, like when I went through the Marine Corps, that's a rites of passage. When you go through college, it's a rites of passage. But I mean, so when I say rites of passage, I mean one that's deliberate, that's focused towards us as Black men.
So we were talking about strategies and practices and things like that, especially related to wellness among Black men. And I remember from our previous conversations, you've really talked about the power of breath.
Yeah.
Breath is life, and breathing
Mhm.
practices. Can you share more of that with our audience?
Sure. So I practice this routinely, breathing, taking a deep breath. The thing is, I know what normal feels like. And so I practice that when I feel myself not feeling normal, nervous, fearful. I have this thing with bridges or with any type of feeling. The first thing I do, I remind myself to do is to breathe. When we get in those situations where the anxiety level is through the roof or there's fear, the first thing or anger, first thing we do is we stop breathing. I think about that type of feeling coming on to me and I remind myself to breathe. What that does is, as soon as you stop breathing, it cuts off oxygen to the brain and our decision making is deteriorating each second that we don't. So breathing, what it does is like this huge shot of energy. So whatever's in front of me, that breath is everything. One, it gives me a split second to think about things, whatever it is, in a more rational term with that shot of energy from the oxygen. It's like, okay, well, it's not really that bad. And with just that instant to take me out of whatever that was, that's enough for me to talk myself back into something that where I could deal with the situation better. But the breathing is the key. And then practicing so that in that moment I remember to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, breath is life. And it also helps us to think and get
Clearly.
centered back to where we are and being present. And being
Absolutely.
present and mindful is key to our health and wellness, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I think the last major question that I have for you in our discussion today will be, how can people connect with you? How can people work with you? How can people pour into and experience these amazing things that you've been talking about?
Good question. So one, I would ask everyone to Google the fat cat. If you Google this, that helps me because, and then click on my site or my social network. It tells the crawlers, the algorithms that the fat cat this is important because a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are clicking on this after they Google the fat cat. So just by doing that, that's one. And sharing, following on my social network. And again, if you search on Facebook, Instagram, Facebook is the fat cat, and on Instagram is the fat cat _life. I do my best to post as often as I can. And basically, I'm talking about where I'm at and how I eat, how I sleep, and just to kind of have you follow along with me on my trip. Commenting is always good, the engagement, but also sponsorship. And I'm also looking to collaborate with individuals. If this sort of touches on what you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me. You could, on the contact page of the website, you could always fill that out. Just put in your email and, hey, let's talk. And that's how we could do it. But outside of that, it's really you doing your own thing and sharing with other people, connecting with other people.
Great, great. And just for those who might not have been able to see the awesome t-shirt that has his really cool logo on it, it is the THE fat PHAT, not the FAT, but the PHAT. There goes another one. Cat, CAT.
Yes.
So you want to look up the fat cat. And that is our wonderful guest, wonderful and gracious guest, Charles Chambers. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yes. Well, we appreciate you and thank you for joining us. We'll be back with questions you didn't ask.